It's Wednesday and we're back with another episode of Bothered. Thank you for listening or watching this podcast. And please remember to get in the comments. Can I tell you, a lot of men have been in the comments and being very angry. So I hope to see you in there. My actual fans, not just like random trolls. Ugh, I hate the internet. But thank you so much. Hello, it's me, Julie Kim. Welcome to Bothered, my little podcast about being bothered. Every week I share short stories.
Living like this, I might lose it.
They're mostly real situations that have happened to me. You wouldn't believe some of them, or maybe you would. Maybe you can relate.
Living like this, I might lose it.
I was doing bedtime with my daughter the other night, and she said, "Mom, when I grow up, I want to have a kid." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "But I don't want to have a husband." And to that, I also said, "Okay." And she said, "Is that okay?" And I said, "Yeah, of course that's okay. But are you sure you don't want a husband?" She's like, "Well, maybe so he can cook and clean," which is very hilarious. But we do teach her that all people have value. And it was just funny because it was the same day that I had seen excerpts of a very good podcast episode with Charlize Theron on Call Her Daddy with Alex Cooper. That's a slightly bigger podcast than this one. And Charlize was just talking about her life as a single woman with kids. And she just seems so happy. And she is just like living her best life. She's probably living everybody's best life, people. And I say that as a very happily married woman and as somebody whose husband is also in the room. Anyways, that reminded me of like that whole era when I used to be on the apps. Charlize was also, why do I keep calling her Charlene? I'm sorry. Why am I apologizing? I don't even know her. But yes, it's not nice to mispronounce anyone's name. Charlize was also talking about being on the apps, and she called it a total, quote, clown show. And I remember being on the apps, which I'm not on anymore because my husband does not approve, and also because I am not a cheater. But it reminded me of my time on the apps and just like of really bad dates that I've had. And everybody I know, everybody you know that's been on the apps has had a bad story. There was one particularly like weird and just very small story that I've got from a time when I was living in Victoria, BC. I had moved there for like a year. I was born and raised in Toronto. See, I'm wearing my very little gold Toronto Blue Jays pendant that my mom got me when I was little. And now I live in Vancouver. But for a very short year, I lived in Victoria, BC, and I was there as a student, and I was doing a little bit of comedy, and I was also on the apps. And you may know when you live in a place for not a long time and it's a new place, it's a little weird. And, you know, you meet people and you hang with people and, you know, you're like trying to be open. But in truth, you're quite frankly, hanging out with people who are not your people and you're not their people either, but you're trying to be open. And normally the end result is like, some like weirdness. So anyways, I met a guy on an app and like he said he was 5'8", and he's like, let's go meet for this outdoor festival. It was like a summer day in Victoria. And I said, okay. And I get there. And of course he's not 5'8", because 5'8" is that liar height that men give when they're anywhere from like 5'5" to 5'7.5". I mean, guys who are really 5'8" say they're 5'9", and people who are 5'9" say they're 5'10". I find that guys who are over 6 feet did not lie about their height because they're very confident in their over 6 feet height. Anyways, I digress. So I meet this guy and he is not 5'8", and whatever. It's a lie, but it's also like one of the standard lies, which doesn't make it okay, but it was a lie. And he was like, okay. He looked, honestly, I don't really remember what he looked like because he kind of looked like every guy. And I'm not even saying that to offend every guy or him. I just don't remember. He had like brownish hair. It was short. He had a face with facial features like nothing outstanding, like no big markings that I remember, normal size eyes and nose and mouth. He was just like a normal guy, not unattractive, not attractive. And all I knew was that he was also new to the city. He had just moved there to like help open a restaurant. And that's all that I knew. He wasn't like the owner of the restaurant or whatever. He was just like helping to open the restaurant. Anyways, our date is just like kind of walking around outdoors, which is a very British Columbia thing to do. And we like sat a few times as there were like outdoor shows, like a busker or whatever. And the one thing that I found a little bit weird on this date was that this guy was like a little bit too touchy. He sat a little bit too close. Like we had just met and he'd kind of like wanted to hold hands. And I'm not a touchy person, probably because nobody touched me when I was a child growing up. I didn't get hugs or I loved yous or kisses. And as an adult, I will say, whatever, that is what it is. But it also means that like you grow up into someone who doesn't automatically like have an inclination towards physical affection. And even so, I knew this guy was a little bit too touchy. So anyways, the date ends. I go home. And like later that night, he's just like, oh, I had a really nice time. And I'm like, did you? Because it was like just okay. I had a nice time. You want to hang out again? And maybe this is my fault, but I have always been pretty straightforward. Like I don't say maybe when the answer is a no. And I don't think I've ever ghosted anybody, but maybe I should have, because what I did was I wrote back and I said, I wasn't really feeling it, but I hope you are well, or like one of those sign-offs, right? Like take care. I wish you the best, all those things that we say that we kind of mean, but don't really mean. Like I wish you the best, but I'm not going to be there to see if it happens. I don't know. So anyways, I thought I was like pretty respectful by being straightforward, not at all rude, but just like saying my truth. And his response was to write back and he said, okay, but just remember that I know where to find you. Because he didn't know where I lived, but I had let him know that I, was doing stand-up comedy and I was often out at local shows. His response to being lightly and mildly rejected after an afternoon of walking outdoors together for like an hour was to threaten me. And my response, I will say that I kind of shit my pants just a little bit. I mean, he wasn't a big guy. Like I could have totally taken him, could still take him in case he's listening, whatever the fuck his name is. Like, again, I think it's Dave. But like, who the fuck says that? What kind of fragility exists in a man like that he can't just say, okay, well, thanks for your time anyways. But his first response is to put this broad looming threat on me that he knows where to find me to do whatever he wants to do. And again, it kind of like, it just jarred me. And I think my response was something like, well, I'm glad I've got this screenshot in case I need to show the police. Block. And that is it. And a lot of people have much worse stories. Unfortunately, I mean, we're seeing a lot of things in the news about basically the big theme here, which is when some people cannot take rejection. There are a lot of stories out there of girls and women being harmed, in worst cases killed, because a man has felt rejected by them. I mean, it's a scary place out there. I had a friend once in Toronto who went on a first date. She went to a coffee shop, and when she got there, she texted the guy and she said, "Hey, I'm here." And he texted and said, "Oh, I just live upstairs. I'll be there in 5 minutes." And then like 10 minutes passes and she's like, "Oh, I'm still here. Are you coming down?" And he said, "Actually, why don't you just come upstairs to my place?" She had never met this man before. And she was a grown woman and knew enough to be like, "Yeah, I'm not coming to your place," because probably she didn't want to be murdered. I mean, I'm surprised the guy didn't send like a fucking dick pic and like a picture of the knife that he was going to use to like stab her. It's so ridiculous. And then she was just like, I'm not going to meet with you. And then he started berating her and calling her like really bad names, like including a slut. And he started being like difficult, like saying that she was being so difficult and why can't you just be easygoing and like just come upstairs. Totally weird. And she left. And that's like one of her stories now. We all know people who have been on the apps and have these stories. I mean, we all have had these stories ourselves. Oh, it is really disgusting. And let me tell you, as the mother of a small girl, this terrifies me. This kind of thing terrifies me. In particular, what some men do when they get rejected. Have you seen TikToks? Lately, I've been seeing a bunch of TikToks of women who like low key like record interactions like near or at the end of a date. One was a girl's like ring like camera from outside of her home caught when she told the guy like, oh, I'm just tired, like you can't come inside. And he's like, are you sure I can't come inside your place? I make a really good drink. She's like, no, I'm really tired, but thanks. And then she goes inside and he, unaware that he's been recording, kind of has a tantrum. He starts like saying to the air, okay, thanks very much. I just paid $200 for dinner, but I can't come inside. Like that is what is inside the minds of some of these men who get rejected. I've seen another TikTok of a woman and she just like had her phone on the table. And I think she had told the guy like, oh, I don't want to go on another date. And he's like, or I don't want to go home with you or something like that. We will show it or I'll link to it. And he's like, oh, so I just paid $200. Like I picked you up. I paid $200 for this date, but like, we're not having sex. Like it was not computing in his head. Like he didn't even know to hide those words or to hide those thoughts. He just literally thought he could say, no, I bought you dinner. I picked you up. You have to have sex with me. This is literally 2025 and what some men think that they can expect from women. I mean, this even has a term now, rejection killings. There's an article from CBS New York. It says, rejection killings, dangers women face when telling men no. That's an actual news story. That's how big of a thing that it is. Oh, and this is from last month. Teenage social media influencer killed for rejecting man's advances. She didn't even know the man. This was just an unwell man in Pakistan. And he made advances towards this teenage girl who said, no, thank you. And then he killed her in front of her mother. He was 22. She was a teenager. Egyptian man kills woman for rejecting marriage proposal. That's fairly recent news also. This is devastating. The single biggest thing I'm worried about as the mother of a girl is that this kind of shit is going to happen to her. It's happening everywhere. Here's an article from Detroit. Police say man shot and killed woman who rejected him. And then another article. Another young woman murdered after rejecting man's advances. It goes on and on and on. 18-year-old woman, Lily Sullivan, murdered by 31-year-old man after rejecting his advances because they can't take no for an answer. And it's like, I said no to a second date. You threatened me. What do you think is going to happen? Oh, yeah, I didn't have a good time. But now that I know you're fucking psychotic, yes, I will go on a second date with you. Like, what the fuck? I mentioned before that I have never ghosted anybody, but honestly, I think that maybe this is part of why ghosting has started. Because if I ghosted this man, this 5'8", boring man with small hands, I don't think I mentioned the small hands. If I ghosted him, he never would have been able to threaten me. I mean, who knows if he would follow me anyway, but I think maybe it's these kind of fucking dangerous interactions that make people not feel safe continuing the conversation. I should have ghosted. I've never ghosted, but maybe I should. I'm going to start right now. I'm going to ghost this podcast. Thanks for watching and listening to this week's episode of Bothered. Remember to tune in next Wednesday. We are weekly. I'm taking a break for the summer just from the shows. We've got lots of exciting things coming up, but share your stories with me, and I'm going to read and reply to all the emails. bothered@juliekimcomedy.com. Thank you so much. Have a good week. Bye.
Living like this, I might lose it. Living like this, I might lose it.